day and a warm welcome to each and every one of you joining us today. My name is Trevor Pereira and I'm the Managing Director of the Maritime Standard. This is edition 2 of the TMS webinar series, COVID-19, a leadership perspective, and today's theme is shaping industry response to crewing challenges. And to discuss this very important topic in detail, please allow me to welcome our esteemed panel of speakers. And we have with us today Mr. Ali Shihab, CEO of Kuwait Oil Tanker Company, Mr. Nitin Mehta, CEO of Tomini Shipping, Dr. Ruwanti De Silva, CEO of SCM Plus, Captain Sanjeev Sharma, Managing Director, Bernard Schulte, Ship Management India, and Mr. John Ramage, the Chief Operating Officer of International Registries, the Marshall Islands. I'd like to take this opportunity to also thank our sponsors, DNVGL, JM Bakshi, Tomini Shipping, and Islamic PNI Club. So without any further delay, may I please welcome your moderator, the editor of the Maritime Standard, and one of shipping and maritime's most respected names, Mr. Clive Woodbridge. Over to you, Clive.
Thank you, Trevor. I just want to echo your thanks to our four panelists, Ruwanti De Silva, Ali Shihab, Nitin Mehta, John Ramage, and Captain Sanjeev Sharma for taking their time to give us their thoughts and their mindset about the impact of the crisis on seafarers and on crewing and manning in particular. There's no doubt at all that we're facing an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in shipping, which ultimately will have a massive effect, not just on the industry, the shipping industry, but also on the whole supply chain and world trade in total if it's not addressed. You know, it's estimated that around in excess of 150,000 seafarers are at present stranded on board at the moment. They are in effect key workers, but key workers whose shift has got no end in sight. And I think it's building up to be a major issue for the seafarers themselves and for the stakeholders in the industry. So I hope today's webinar is going to be a very dynamic, vibrant, fast-paced discussion. And I'm going to get the ball rolling by asking each of our panelists in turn a single question, which I'm going to ask them to respond to in no more than a minute. And the question is, if you could just one step at this present time to improve the lot of seafarers or the crewing and manning process more generally, what would it be? So I'm going to ask Captain Ali Shihab to answer that question first. Captain Ali, are you able to answer that question? I'm not sure whether Ali Shihab is with us at the moment. I'll turn to Nitin Mehta. Nitin, what would be the single most important thing for you be to try and address this particular issue at the present time?
Well, I would say, the government of the day, well, in our case, most of our seafarers are Indian seafarers and few Sri Lankans. So we would, like to appeal to all the governments because the change of seafarers is heavily dependent on the, air routes getting opened, which is completely in the hands of the governments of the day. So if I was to ask everybody, I would say, please acknowledge and understand that seafarers are very key people in the entire logistics chain. So anything which is getting delivered anywhere in the world, a seafarer is involved. So please identify him as a key component, key person, and then facilitate the crew change with some nodal centers set up where people like us can all come together, crewing companies, and facilitate the crew change. Because crew which is a bit disturbed or stressed is not a very good sign. So it's important that all governments acknowledge the importance of seafarers as key workers and do something to facilitate overall. Probably a lot of governments have to come together for this.
Okay, thank you very much, Nitin. Ruwanti, what would be the thing that you would most like to see happen?
Yes, I think Nitin summed it all up, but I would add on further by saying that empathy, understanding, and assurance to the seafarers and their families will also go a long way in this situation. And if you will just give me a few seconds to say something to the seafarers themselves on board. As you mentioned, there are about 150,000. I wouldn't call them stranded because we, especially we in Sri Lanka and our government and our leadership has taken this up. I have also written a paper on this, and I hope that helps. We have a solution now. So they are not stranded. We are for them. We are with them. And in this moment, even though we don't promote any particular religion, we are all believers of some kind of God. We may have a different name for our God. I'm not a very religious person myself, but at times like this, we do turn to our God. So this little prayer I want to say to our seafarers, if you will let me, Clive.
Certainly, yes, Nishu. Go.
Dear God, we depend on you for our life itself. We depend on our seafarers for many of our daily needs. Watch over them, keep them from danger and their families too. Befriend them in their loneliness and send them safely home to those they love. I would like really to leave this message with our seafarers. You're not alone. We are with you. We have solutions for you.
Thank you, Ranti. I'm sure that's a lovely message and one that many people around the world and many of those people listening to would empathise with. I'm sure our hearts go out to all seafarers and their families at this time. And as you say, if we can hold them in our thoughts, that's the most important thing. Ali Shihab, can I ask you for your one step? I mean, do you have any particular priorities that you'd like to suggest at this time? Hi, Ali.
A very good morning and afternoon wherever you are. Unfortunately, I couldn't start with you at the very beginning because I'm still in a corporate meeting with our corporate CEO. However, with regard into this, the situation that we are in at the moment, and with regards into our seafarers, the digital transformation that we have been talking about for many years, it's been always discussing having the virtual ship where you have customized it and that you will have your data that you need about the vessel and how you can manage it and operate it, and that relationship between ship and office. And from there, we were driving all this digital communication. However, the subject of the seafarers, that was, somehow managed in a very classical and conventional way. And now the situation is very difficult, very different and very difficult for the seafarers. And we have to unleash our capability of how we really can transform this into something to make their journey to be a safer and more efficient. And in this regard, really, that's where it shows the system at the moment. The system, which means the people, the company, the capabilities. How resilient are we with being able to unleash this capability and transform it into means and ways of supporting the team who are really working in this front line and ensuring that the trade, irrespective where it is coming from, whether it is from this part of the world to another part of the world, they are all on the same mission and trying to deliver this energy sources or products that we need from east, west, north, or south. And basically what we need here is just to make it safe and efficient. Safety of our people, safety of the process. So there are a lot of challenges, and basically we are working very strong to ensure that all these aspects are in place.
Okay, thanks very much, Ali. Sanjeev Sharma, leading ship manager. From your perspective, what's the most important thing? What step would you like to see taken to address this topic?
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. The thing is very much what Nitin has said. This is of course, the need of the time. But having said that, whenever such unprecedented happenings come the way in the world, it's, it is always received first by a shock, and there is a immediate reaction to curtail it, and then over a period of time you start accepting it as a reality, whether it is in personal life or otherwise, largely, and then over a period of time you learn to control it and learn to live with it. So my message, is that the COVID-19 is not going to go away very quickly from this world. Okay, maybe we will know how to control it better, or maybe the rate of infection might come down over a period of time, but it's going to remain there for quite a few months to come. We can't wait it to evaporate fully. So we have to learn and devise new ways, accept it as a new normal, as everybody is saying, and move forward. Now, while in this time, you mentioned the word, in fact, I also don't agree to word stranded. Seafarers are a very resilient community. I wouldn't call them stranded. Of course, their contract or their stay on board the ship has been extended a bit. But of course, because of the lack of communication, or I would say having a lot of miscommunication through the social media, there is a sense of anxiety, and which is well understood. And at this moment, our effort should be to remove that anxiety from the mind of our seafarers and communicate more with them. And that is what is BSN as a management company has been focusing on and doing it. We are involving all our staff. We are sending motivated messages to the ship. We are trying to communicate with the families of the seafarer who are ashore. So we are working from all fronts, basically, so that till the time they are on board. We can't control the sign off and sign on, because it is a governmental matter when the air routes will open and when the various governments allow seafarers to move around safely. Till that time, our main aim is to keep motivating, and so they are mentally healthy and they should not land up into another trouble on board the ship. So my prime objective at this moment is that my seafarers on board the ship are well motivated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sajid. Over to you, John. I mean, as a sort of flag state, you have a particular, or a representative of a flag state, you have a particular perspective. Would you have one particular ask of the powers that be at the moment in terms of trying to alleviate the issues relating to seafarers and the crewing, the qualifications, those sort of things? Are there any one thing that you would like to highlight?
Thanks, Clive. Good afternoon, everybody. I think I would kind of reiterate really what the previous speakers have said. Yes, seafarers are key workers, and Sanjeev also mentioned to get motivated crew on board. And I think the new normal is seafarers will not be able to be repatriated everywhere in the world. And I think it's necessary for the industry to try and convince governments to identify areas where reliefs can take place, because the virus seems to be coming and going in different places. So if crew reliefs can be affected, say, in Europe, or if Europe has a close down, they can be carried out elsewhere in the world, in the Far East, for example. But I think it does require a bit more planning and a bit more foresight and a bit more forbearance from the crew, because everybody realizes, well, I hope everybody realizes, I think in this day and age, seafarers are an owner's asset. The ship won't go anywhere without the seafarer, and they operate the ship in a safe and secure manner. The owners are trying to provide the best conditions that they can, and it is necessary for governments to realize that seafarers are a special case and need to be relieved at some point near the end of their contract.
Thank you, John. I think there's some good comments in those opening remarks. I think that sets the tone well. There's a role for governments, there's a role for digitalisation, there's a role for individual ship companies in dealing with that. I'm now going to ask each of our panelists a sort of specific question in turn, starting with Nitin. Tomini Group is a company that owns ships, but it also has a manning and crewing operation, and it's perhaps quite, I would say unusual, but it's quite specific in that context. So I just wondered, how is this crew change crisis affecting your company, and how are you looking to mitigate the effects of that?
Well, we are, like you mentioned, we are a bit unique because we are a very traditional ship owning company owned by a family of ship owners who have been doing this business for 70 years. So we actually have technical, crewing, commercial, everything in-house, which is quite unique these days. On the challenges, of course, we are also facing challenge because credit to our seafarers, I would say. Most of them are very, very understanding. And they themselves, when we speak to them, because we, like Sanjeev also mentioned, we are trying to be in touch with them on a regular basis, keeping them motivated, talking to their families ashore. They're definitely a very resilient workforce. So by and large, we do not have any major concerns as of now. But wherever we are closer to India, because all our seafarers are essentially Indians. So wherever our ship has come close to India, we have diverted and we have changed the route. But today, it's our concern also because nobody wants a ship seafarer to actually get exhausted and be prone to accidents. So it's important that we are, if you like, put pressure on ourselves to try and see if we don't extend their contracts rather than absolutely necessary. But admittingly, I think about 90% of our seafarers have reacted very, very positively. They are very understanding. We are communicating with them on a regular basis. I've personally written letters to most of them who were on extended contracts. And the feedback I have from them is they understand. They realize that this is not in our control in any way. And we are actually doing a lot of things and trying to move around few things to make the necessary changes. So although we do believe there is stress around this because we don't know, like Sanjeev mentioned, we don't know when this is going to end. We are hoping for the quickest, but we all know practically this may go on for this entire year. So keeping that in mind, we are taking some proactive steps to ensure that we are able to relieve our crew as and when possible. There's very favorable news coming from India as well. A couple of days ago, the shipping minister has assured that he's going to do something about it after 31st of May. So keeping our fingers crossed. But I have to admit that it's not that big an issue right now with us. But I think that primary reason is we are well planned and we are communicating with our seafarers. But we want to address it before it actually becomes a big issue.
Okay, thanks very much, Nitin. Ali Shihab, you've been listening to those comments. So there's a sort of view that there is an element of anxiety, but it's under control. Looking at it from KOTC's point of view and your seafarers around on ships around the world, have you had any concerns about seafarers' mental health during the crisis? And if so, what sort of steps are you taking to ameliorate those concerns?
So therefore, let's look at this, the ship-shore connectivity. Were you well established long time ago? Because you need actually to be closer today with your ship staff and talk to them and attend to their needs, whether they need one-to-one or group-to-one kind of discussion and communication. And that's very, very important. And that's how resilient are the systems nowadays. If we are able to ensure continuous, flawless connectivity with our people, that gives them a sense of assurance. And not only that, with the different countries around the world, complete lockdown, which means that there are various services which are not able to be rendered to the fleets and the ships. And simple thing is like the food supplies and the rations. And these are the things which are currently, it depends on where you are, how resilient or reliable the system over there. And then you'll be able actually to source out whatever you need for your daily consumptions and needs. Not only that, when the banking sector closed down, the arrangement of the cash also, that was a problem. That was an issue there. And we have worked our level best to coordinate with our global agents network and with the banking systems in order to ensure that we don't have any kind of hurdles in that, and then obviously it's going to reflect very negatively on the ability of the ship to perform, which can be leading at the end into their psychological status, being out there and then not being able to live normal. So we have established many years ago this kind of a ship-shore connectivity and having a resilient system in place. Not only that, the office staff, that's where the main break it or make it to succeed during this period. And our team being marvelous during this period and really supporting the ship staff in whatever they need, yeah? Because you might run into situations which are out of your control because the regulations, the requirements which have been set by the ports, by the countries, vary from day to day and from one port or one country to another. And therefore, how can you really manage all of that remotely and then give all the support to your team? And when they really see this kind of support that we are doing, this actually gives a great relief to our team. And that's the balance we have been working with and trying to achieve, and it's working very well.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Some interesting comments there around cash and seafarers. I suppose that's as a society generally, we're moving towards a cashless society perhaps a bit faster as a result of this crisis. Maybe that's something that needs to be picked up on within the shipping industry. Sanjeev, Bernard Schulte, massive ship manager. I mean, looking at the industry generally in terms of ship management, I mean, how do you feel that they have responded? Have they stepped up to the plate to address this issue? And if so, what are the key issues that they've encountered along the way as a community?
Yeah, I mean, we are currently managing 600 ships and we have about 23 to 24 nationalities. So you see, when the crisis was picking up, so there was a concerted decision from the CEO not to do any crew change until the end of April. And that was for the safeguarding that during the travel or, transit, our seafarers should not catch any infection. And we are very fortunate that up till now, all our managed ships, by and large, are not infected, none of them, except one cruise vessel where one of our motormen got infected, and unfortunately he passed away also because of that. Otherwise, all cargo ships, other ships, not a single infection. So at this moment, that is also one of our major concerns, that the infection should not find way to the ship. And this is also we are trying to explain to the seafarer that why we are also very conservative not to do crew change at a place where there is a risk of seafarer signing off or signing on, transiting through and on the way catching a virus. Having said that, after April 30, we also start looking for opportunity to do the crew change. And I'm pleased to advise that wherever it was possible, specifically in those countries like in India, Indian seafarers, or maybe in Philippines, Philippine seafarer, or in China, Chinese seafarer, we were able to do some crew changes. About 700 crew changes we have done already during this period since 30th April. And as things are opening, we are keeping a close watch and always looking for an opportunity where, because we understand no matter how much we explain to the seafarer and all those things, it will take its toll slowly on their mental health and performance, and we do not want that thing to happen. And the seafarer ending up in some accident or something like that because of that mental pressure. So this is going on, and together various ship management, the intermanager, which is a society of all the ship management companies, they are doing a lot as a community to talk to various governments and authorities, so that for the ease of or the facilitating the crew change in these times. And there have been efforts with the government, and like we are talking, like Indian government has allowed even chartered flights if it is possible. But it is not that easy. The other receiving countries should also be accepting it or allowing this crew change. People are thinking, and there is a lot of discussion has been going on this.
Okay, thank you, Sanjeev. Some good point. It's interesting to see that crew changes are taking place. Perhaps sometimes in the media you get the idea that we're at a standstill. So it's good that it's happening and it's happening in a effective way. John, turning to you, I mean, as a representative of a flag state administration, and Marshall Islands are, I believe, the biggest now. Is that correct? I think they're the biggest, are they, or second biggest?
Thanks, Clive. We're not quite that big yet. We are currently third largest.
Third largest.
But there's very little difference between ourselves and the second.
Yeah.
So we still have about 4,700 ships. So it's a lot of ships.
So when the ship owners that are under the fleet, what are the biggest problems that they're coming to you with? And in particular, at the beginning of this crisis, there was an agreement to extend seafarer certification and to tick all the boxes for another 3 months. I mean, is that working well in practice?
Yeah, I mean, we're quite fortunate because we are a very decentralized organization. We have 28 offices around the world, and we have been able to. We set ourselves up when this virus first appeared so that everybody could work from home if necessary. So, and as the virus waxed and waned in different areas, so we would have a complete lockdown in one area whilst another area was operating. So this allowed us really to kind of function more or less business as usual for us. So we're still producing licenses. A lot of our licenses applications are received online now, or we get scanned copies and we put those in the system. So, but we have also recognized that the underlying qualification of seafarers, sometimes those can expire, and we have taken the decision that if the underlying certificate expires and the seafarer is unable to get off, then we will extend that our Marshall Islands endorsement to make sure that the ship is properly manned and the seafarers are properly qualified.
Okay, but how sustainable is that? I mean, how long could that process go on for, do you think?
Well, the process of extending licenses obviously is limited, but ultimately we would hope that the seafarers will get off within, say, 1 to 2 months beyond their contract. But with the renewal of or issuing of Marshall Islands endorsements, we could basically go on forever like this because we are, as I said, it's business as usual. And although our guys are connected to our network, and they put all the data into the central database, and then whichever office is sufficiently manned to print a certificate, we can send that seafarer's details to that office. He can print off his license, and that license is dispatched to the manager's office.
Okay, well, thanks very much, John. Rowanti, sorry to leave you to last there, but I thought because you could perhaps take a sort of more holistic industry-wide view. The crisis obviously has shined a light on seafarer issues. What longer-term changes do you feel are needed in the way that the industry deals with the seafarers, crewing, manning, all those issues relating to that? And do you see any innovative or any interesting solutions coming forward?
I think so, because I can assure you one thing, Clive. When I started my career many moons ago, and the way we recruited crew, the way we appraised crew, the way we settled their wages, the way we did their allotments, I'm sorry to say it's pretty much the same. We have fooled ourselves to some extent, in the sense that we think we are digitalized, we think we have technology and we are efficient. Yes, I agree with that. But what does that digitalization really mean? If we have converted the same processes of how we handle our recruitment, our selection, and our settlement of wages and allotments, just by converting it to computer work, I do not think that that would help ease the burden of either side, on board as well as ashore. And at a time like this, where we have unprecedented problems, it's not only the crew changes that pose a threat and a challenge, it's also these issues. How did we select our seafarers? Typically from the seafaring nations, but for which ships? How did we do our crew wages? Via CTM, cash to master, delivered on board with escorted bodyguards carrying large sums. And when these poor guys sign off, they are holding a bundle of cash, returning to their respective homes. Is that the right thing? So I have personally been involved with a smaller ship owner with a solution for this. It's not rocket science. It's something any one of us can do. It's on debit cards. If we have that in operation for at least half of our fleet, I'm sure that would have helped the burden. Of course, an element of cash on board is necessary, but the way we handle the allotments and that cash, I think, is absolutely not in line with our current technological era. That's one thing. The other thing I'm saying is about recruitment itself. We have our own traditional seafaring countries. We typically go to those countries. We have our either owned or outsourced manning agents, and we go there. I think it's time that we looked at clusters. Where are our ships operating? And is it possible to align our crew, typically at least to pass by those trading areas? It will be, in this situation of COVID, very, very productive. But even otherwise, the crew changes is a huge amount of money for the ship owner. So if you're closer to your trading area in your hiring and in your signing off, then I think that's an area we should look into. Now, looking at the situation, what I am seeing, because I really have a passion for this subject of crewing, the amount charged by agents for crew changes, I think, is obscene. Because what will happen is that the owners themselves are going to be absolutely put off. The larger owners can survive this. What about the smaller and the medium-sized owners? They will not be able to sustain. So countries like Philippines and India especially, where, for example, in Philippines, I heard a report from Al Jazeera that 25% of their GDP, $6 billion US, comes from seafaring. So they have to protect this industry. I am happy with Sri Lanka because we are really located in a very strategic position. So we would love to invite all the ship owners who happen to trade passing our southern shores, which is roughly about a ship every minute. So that's roughly about 240 ships passing our shores daily. We have a literacy rate of 92% in our country. Sadly, we haven't done well in being a seafaring nation, but we are there. We have a great leadership now, and we are open to better training facilities. So come to us, and we can definitely be one of your also preferred seafaring nations. We would love that. On the other aspect of crew change, I was also privileged to be able to write a paper to our government authorities, and many others would have as well. But what we are having in place is more than a crew change, confidence. We are giving confidence to ship owners, to the crew, and to our locals that this virus is not going to be imported to the locals, that this virus is not going to impact your crew changes. So we have created a 4-party body. And what I have recommended is also a coordinating center where the agents coordinate with our Sri Lankan Navy, with our Sri Lankan medical health system, with our Sri Lankan Port Authority, and quarantine centers managed and supervised together with the Navy and the health authority. That way, you ship owners will know that this is not a private enterprise trying to make a buck on this situation, but we are not only trying to help the seafarers, we are also trying to, make some foreign exchange, make some earning in this country, which is not a rich country. At the same time, we want to make a mark in the industry that seafaring is a part of us. So give us this chance to help the seafarers and give us a chance also to be a part of the seafaring world. That's what I would like to say at this moment.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Ruanti. You made a number of interesting points there. I don't know if anybody, the other panelists wanted to pick up on them. I mean, one of the ones was around the need perhaps for a diversification of crewing, if I understood you, or that perhaps we're too reliant on a few sort of small hubs. I mean, Nitin, is that something you have some empathy for, that perhaps the crisis has exposed some structural issues around sourcing of crew for ships?
Yes, I would agree. Sorry, was it to me or to?
Yes, to Nitin. Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Okay. No, I would agree. In fact, recently we took 7 seafarers from Sri Lanka when one of our vessels was in the area. I would agree with Dr. Ruanti because I think more we diversify, it'll be easier. But my only apprehension, because we have 10 ships, we'll go to 15. So we are not a very large operation where we can actually have offices in various countries. So we are hoping that this will go away and hopefully we'll come back to normal. But I think she has made some very interesting points, and it would be a good idea to develop in certain other geographies some crewing operation for us to make it relatively more price effective, also more efficient, as if you like. And then I think in a situation like this, which is unprecedented, you're at least placed better. You have more than one location to make the changes. So I think, yes, this is perhaps gonna be the future. Perhaps if this does not go away in a hurry, you will see a lot of owners developing other centers and taking crew from wherever there's a possibility. Sri Lanka, of course, is very, very interesting. We have taken some people and we are very happy with the quality. So Sri Lanka is one, Philippines could be another one. Then, in that area, we'll have to look what we do in the Americas and that area. But wherever, I think that is going to be the future, yes. You will see a lot of diversification from the owners in taking crews from various countries.
Okay, perhaps come to Sanjeev, following up on the point there. One element of the whole process we haven't touched upon is the role of ship agents and also, I suppose, the port authorities. Do you think the crisis has indicated that there needs to be a change of approach there? And if so, what would you like to see happen?
That's for me?
Yes, please, yes, Sanjeev said.
Okay. Before I make this one, the diversification of the crewing is already taking place. We are employing close to 23, 24 nationalities, and sometimes also participating in development. But one has to understand, of course, Barnard Schulte is a very big company and with a lot of resources. The crewing is not just a simple process of picking up anybody and putting on board the ship. So what goes before that is a huge amount of effort and also a lot of investment into the person. So it takes a while to develop a seafarer.
Sanjeev, we are hoping you will do the training and we'll pick them up.
Yeah, most welcome. Most welcome. Most welcome. I lost all the videos for some reason. Okay, anyway.
Carry on, we can hear you still.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, okay, diversification is a very good idea and it is already happening. And there are, even on the west coast of Africa, where the trade is increasing, and we have already started investing into developing Ghanaian and Nigerian crew. We know the future is changing, and as the economical development happen on certain countries, you will find the crewing shifting to the other developing nations. So this is bound to happen. This will definitely happen. Now, coming to the related to the agencies and other operations and all. I really didn't get the actual sense of what is the problem, because you will definitely need some, because you are not present there. Agents were always will be required for facilitating these things. But there are countries where this crew change operation is, how to say, much more streamlined. The regulations are much more simpler, like Singapore or maybe Hong Kong or something. The assistance or the intervention from the agents are much less. But there are other countries, including my own, where the processes are not that simple. They're a bit complicated, and then if you are a ship manager not belonging to that area, it requires a lot of effort. So it is, I can't for any reason ascertain whether the money charged by them is fair or not fair. It's a question I cannot comment on, really. But that assistance is definitely necessary, because there are local regulations, even like in China, which are very, very complicated. If you don't have a local presence or local understanding, it is not that easy.
Well, I think what is making this a little more complex is that, nowadays, a lot of ships have to call ports only for crew change. Because if ships were actually calling on ports and for discharging or loading, and we were doing the crew change at the time, the cost was not substantially higher. But if you are actually going to port in India today to do a crew change, I've been told they're doing something about it. So, let's wait for more information on that. But so if you only go for crew change and you're charged full fee as if you're coming in for loading or discharging, that is where it becomes unfair. The agents charge what they charge, but I think it's port fee which actually kills the owner, not so much. Agents, of course, charge. They have to survive, and I understand that. So their charges have not really changed. It's the port fee which is actually biting all the owners today.
Okay. And Nitin, you again, another group that we haven't just touched on yet is the role of port authorities and authorities that are sitting above them at a governmental level. Ali Shihab, do port authorities worldwide need to change the way that they look at things and the fee charging and the regulations? And in particular, I mean, there's been talk of perhaps a need for a special green channel for seafarers in the same way as diplomatic people have special channels when they go through ports and airports. Would you be in favour of a change along those lines?
Well, ports authority, they follow the mandate of the government, and the government will set their mandate depending on the situation on the ground, i.e., what is the impact of the COVID-19 on the state. And therefore, based on that, what comes in and what comes out gets regulated. And it can be relaxed, and it can be as severe as we can see in certain places. Yeah, there are ports in the world which, by large, they've always been very dynamic. However, if we talk about Singapore, I think there is a full lockdown until 1st of June. Is that?
That is correct.
Yeah. And then we have Fujairah on the other side. So there are restrictions, but at the same time there are flexibilities. But it depends on the situation on that day. So there is really what is being said, what is being broadcasted, and what they said we need from you 1, 2, 3, 4 can change any minute depending on the situation and how the readings. Because today, when you look at the news channels and then you look at the news bar at the bottom, what do you see? The last 24 hours became such a regular statement you hear. Last 24 hours, so many died, so many new cases. Total cases is the fact. These are the 3 numbers that we have in hand. And I was in a meeting just before, and actually we were talking about various things, and one of them was, about the future of coming back to work and life back to normal. And what is the future of life back to normal in the future is the one who's not being infected with the COVID-19 is the bad one. So either you are an ex-COVID-19 case, or either because you will have your immune system strong and or you take the vaccine. And if you still remain not in these two cases, you will be a subject of being infected in the future, and probably, there is always a question mark about you that you might be getting sick. So therefore, when you look at that, and I'm trying now, let's go into whatever service I want to do for the ship. Is it a crew change? That question mark is on him. And then he has to have a cookie on his passport or on his whatever documentation that he uses that tells his story. You have now to prove, what are you? Are you A, B, or C? And therefore, that will have to be identified before you travel from wherever point you started from, whether it is from the ship to the shore or from the shore to the ship. And going through those gate systems is very, very complicated. We're talking about crew change, and there are other challenges actually to do with surface engineers, to do with the oil majors, to do with the certificates renewals, etc., the classification society. There is a much bigger, as everybody know, I'm sure, that there's a much bigger hurdles which are being set in the system. And when we go back into the question about how ports are handling this, it's impossible to answer it one answer for all. It will be depending on the situation on the ground in that port in that country.
But as the industry been talking about the testing of seafarers, you say in the UK, key workers are being told that they are going to be the first in the line to be tested and to be vaccinated. Has there been any discussions within the industry around the testing and vaccination of seafarers, as far as you're aware?
Again,
But
going before, let's identify something which is very unique about the shipping industry, is very fragmented. That's before the COVID-19. And today we are supposed to work excellent, even though with the whole world around us has collapsed as a system, and the procedures, etc. Everything is under rewriting process. So if today it depends which kind of testing that state accepts as a testing of passing, or a testing of identifying whether you are a carrier, you are infected, or which category they will put you in, and then based on that situation. So really, I would answer like what we have. A situation we had a few weeks ago, a vessel which was in the dry dock. The superintendent who was attending the dry dock, he got infected, and he was positive. He was in the hospital. Then the ship, we did a rapid test, and then we found 5 of them confirmed that they are on a rapid test regime, that confirmed that they are infected. So we had them off-sign, took the ship out, came to Kuwait, and then in Kuwait, we did the local authority. We asked them to come on board and do the testing, because we have a responsibility to declare what is the situation, and we, as a responsible owner, what did we do to ensure the future point that we are going to sail to, we are not going to be a carrier and create any disturbance to that system. So therefore, so the local authorities came on board and they did the test for everybody, but it's a different, it's a swipe method, totally different from the first one. And this is in this country is classified as to be the more accurate kind of testing. And therefore, when we did the first one, got the results, they said, oh, there's about 5 of them, there's 5 of them which need to be retested because the sample was not reliable. And then we did the testing, and it's only yesterday, 2 days ago, that we got the confirmation that they're all clear. The 5 people which we off-signed in the dry dock, when we did the swipe test, they became clear. So really, look at how much disturbance is happening to the system. You have signed people, later they find out, after doing 2 tests, found out that they are fine, and then the people you came here, you did all the testing, everything, and we're talking about now already 2 weeks of quarantine period. But for us, we have to take this pain and ensure that the vessel and its crew is clear in all respect. And now vessel is ready and safe to go and take the cargo and proceed to its future destination.
Yeah, I think
now, did I answer you?
Yeah, you did. I think you highlighted a sort of perhaps a key issue here, which is there's a need for global conformity when we emerge from this as to how we deal with these things, because there's just no point in redoing things. Talking about the sort of global perspective here, the IMO recently, I think in the last couple of weeks, has issued a set of protocols which have been widely documented, but there's been some sort of disappointment expressed in the industry that perhaps the reaction has been a bit lukewarm. John, I mean, what role do you feel the IMO has in this in building a sort of a sensible system for seafarer management, for want of a better word, once we get into a sort of a more normal situation?
Yeah. Well, the IMO is basically a body made up of 250 odd countries, and there are representatives from each country at the IMO, and so you would think that would be a very good place to start. And so you've got the IMO, the ILO, the ITF, owners, ICS, owners, Intertanko, have all come out in support of treating seafarers as key workers and various approaches on how to do this. But I think the major stumbling block in the whole thing is whether governments will actually listen. If you've got a government that imposes the lockdown, and seafarers have unfortunately just got to comply with that along with everybody else. But I am disappointed, to be honest, because we put in a press release and a letter in March saying that seafarers should be treated as key workers, and let's try and develop something to ease the relief and on-signing of seafarers. And to be honest, it hasn't really got very far at all. And I think it's basically the governments aren't really listening. And until that actually happens, then I think seafarers are going to continue to have difficulties, and you know, that's owners and managers as well. So it's not one individual group. It's everybody in the industry is affected by this.
Okay.
And you know, if I could just make a comment on the agents and the port authorities. You know, as Ali mentioned, this COVID is going to be here for a very long time. Part and parcel of the agent's job is now going to try and develop streamlined approaches on how they can get the ship staff to the airport and from the airport to the ship. And you know, that requires them to add their voice to the IMO and the various international bodies to try and get the governments to actually treat seafarers like airline crews. Why is there any difference? They're coming from a different country. They have a streamlined approach. They've got a different channel they can go through. Why can't seafarers do that? And I think it's a historical perspective.
Yeah. I think you make some good points there. Why is there a difference between seafarers and airline crew, and the importance of governments listening to the industry? Dr. Rwanti, perhaps before we go and take a little break, would you like to, how can the industry get governments to listen more, and how can we get raise the profile of seafarers so that they are universally treated as key workers?
I think the role of IMO and ITF and all the other bodies is important. But in this situation, other than giving cross-border harmonization and protocol guidelines, I do not think that legally they can demand anything from the respective governments. The governments, on the other hand, have to behave with some common sense and sensibility to safeguard both the seafarers and the rest of the public, because this pandemic is unprecedented. Nobody in our generation has ever experienced anything of this phenomenon. So therefore, I think what is more important is for the governments to understand the importance of seafaring and the importance of the shipping industry, which carries 90% of our trade requirements, and that if seafarers are not treated respectfully, that they are harming themselves. And the other thing is that seafaring nations should remember, like the larger nations, I also refer to India as well, that if doing these crew changes is made difficult, then the owners will seek other options and they are going to be the loser at the end, because it's natural. Number one is affordability. Number two is doability. So people like us in Sri Lanka, we are dying to get this. We are dying to support. We have already come out with protocols. We've already come out with beyond IMO requirements. So that doesn't mean we are greedily trying to get the business of Philippines or India, but it's a natural thing that will happen. So I think the government should understand that from the first world countries that are suffering, take the European world, take the Americas and the others, they will turn to the seafaring world and see, oh my God, we are jobless, we've lost our livelihood. Why not go back to seafaring, which we abandoned decades and decades ago? So we have to watch out, governments have to watch out that this is a threat to the seafaring nations, and we have to be more empathetic towards these crew changes and help. On the innovation side, we have to also go into drone deliveries so that there is least contact. I know that Bernard Schulte was one of the pioneers in the drone delivery, but it is just a 1 kilo, whatever that was delivered. But why not we think of bigger weights for our deliveries? And once again, I can't help but promote my country, Sri Lanka, because we are more strategically located. We can do all this for the shipping industry. So I think the government should take note of all these and come out with new ideas.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rwanti. I'm just going to...
Clive, I have a comment, Clive, if I may.
Ali, please.
I have a comment, if I may.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Just about, because I was reading the questions and something came up about Singapore, that the ports are open and business as usual, but the country is on a lockdown. What I mean, I said before, is I need to buy stuff from the market to take to the ship. So there is hurdles in the way. Even if I do manage to send my team to the ship, off or on, there are other complications which does not make the port to be reliable for me. I have to head, like what is just been mentioned, maybe the business has to go somewhere else, yeah? And find a place, if possible, that maybe they can give a much better service. Number one. Number two, one of the messages I received on the WhatsApp from one of the colleagues, and what she said, you are saying that you were in a corporate meeting, but you are in a boiler suit, you are in the office, and basically this is the message that we are sending to our team, and we are sending into the industry. This is action time. The meeting which I was in the corporate CEO and the other CEOs of the other K companies, most of the guys were wearing boiler suits. They were all in the meeting, which means that they finish from the meeting, then they go to the field. And they will follow and ensure whether it is the upstream or downstream or the midstream, that those operations are happening. I remember back in 25th and 26th of February, and there was an event happening in Dubai. And I was asked a question about what's happening, and the situation where only in China with the COVID-19 was reaching its peak in China. And what I could imagine, because of the factories and all the, the system is on a close down completely, what I could see that the financial system will be impacted. And I said at that time in that interview is that we are expecting something of a similar financial crisis we had in 2008. But I could not imagine that this is going to be beyond China and it's going to go globally. My vision and my understanding was limited only for the Chinese border. And that's how is the situation we are in today. It is impossible for you to predict what is going to be the future. The only way is for you just to be ready, more resilient, i.e. mentally, physically, and get your team together to be ready for the next phase, because it's not going to be easy. That's the comment I wanted to
make. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We had a fantastic discussion before we take the commercial break. We've touched on a whole range of issues, from cashless to seafarers' mental health, to the role of ship agents and port authorities. And I think the most important thing that's come up from me is that there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way in which not just the industry, but the world as a whole views seafarers. That perhaps this is shining a light on how vitally important they are to all our societies, and we need to sort of think about not elevating them into a different category of key worker, and that everybody's got a role to play in that, and that it's a hugely complex business, framing the future post-COVID to make sure that this doesn't happen again, but also that we can continue to function in a sort of in a world where COVID is going to be present, but hopefully under control. So with that, we're just going to take a short commercial break. I'd like to say thank you in advance to our sponsors, JM Baxi, Tamini Shipping, DNVGL, and Islamic P&I Club. But we're going to have a short series of messages from our sponsors that will last about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll return. I've seen that our global audience, who I pay tribute to, have been sending in lots of questions, and I'll be putting questions directly from our global audience to our panelists when we return after these commercial messages. But don't do anything, just sit where you are, and we'll return in 4 to 5 minutes.
Even at our most prepared, danger is inevitable when we are floating into the belly of the beast. At Islamic P&I Club, we make sure you evade even the inevitable. Fly with us over the tides.
Much for those commercial messages. I hope you found them interesting and informative. So my appreciation to JM Baxi, Tamini Shipping, DNVGL, and the Islamic P&I Club. I hope you had a good break. While we've been on air, a whole host of questions have come in from the audience. I'm just going to start with one from Arvind Dahuya, who picks up on something we mentioned right in the beginning, which is the issues around air transport. And essentially, his question is, you know, we're in the business of transportation, and it's sad that seafarers can't travel because of the barriers to air transport. Shouldn't we be discussing using cruise ships or conventional ships to run passenger services to get crew members to where they want to be, and what would be the obstacles to that? I mean, Sanjeev, I'll just pick you at random to answer that one. I mean, should we be looking at, is it feasible to look at other ocean-based forms of transportation to repatriate seafarers?
It doesn't seem so feasible to me because of the time duration taken by a passenger liner vessel to reach from one place to other. And before going to the break, when we were discussing, there has been some discussions about the green channels, you know, for the seafarers, where they can travel, and probably some protocol where they can be received without mingling to the society of that country. They can be taken to place for the crew change purposes. Even the sign of crew can be directly come, and there have been some protocol being discussed. And also, I just wanted to highlight one point that India was the first country to declare seafaring as an essential services. That's why there have been standard protocols that crew changes are possible. So I think more and more countries, if they can accept it as a essential services kind of a thing for the seafaring community, it will be easy.
Does anybody else want to comment on this issue of repatriation and whether there are alternatives to traditional air transport?
I think it's...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so
go on.
Followed by Nitin.
Okay.
Because I think that the ship itself is an isolation center. We have to remember that all the crew is just confined within the premises of the ship. So if the ship has been in passage, let's say for 14 days or even 21 days, I feel they're fairly safe if they, on arrival, with all the port health officers and granting of traffic and things, if they can be declared COVID-free, that safe passage of the ship itself is a quarantine period or a safe period. And the rest of the time of a quarantine period, if the arriving disembarking nation or port can take up the responsibility and take them to a safe haven for the rest of the quarantine period, I feel that we will be doing that. And Sri Lanka is planning to do exactly that.
Okay, Nitin.
Well, you know, SOPs which came out in India also addressed this actually very effectively. And I, you know, really congratulate DG Shipping in India, because they came out with a very detailed SOP, and which is seems very, very fair to me, honestly. I've read through it, and it's very, very fair. I think the only problem is cost, not the process itself. On this issue, I think there is definitely some merit in this, because if you remember when I started my conversation, I said some nodal centers can be made. So, of course, for every ship, it will not be possible, but if you can make some nodal centers and collect some crew, together 100, 200 of them, and then, do the transportation, because like Dr. Ruvanti said, there's the Philippines, there's India, so these are essentially big seafaring nations. So if you can, if you like, we can make nodal centers, start collecting crew, of course, have protocols in place to keep them in isolation, including the sea time, 14, 15 days, which is relevant, and then, transport them one way. I know when a charter plane or a ship can come with the new crew and they can take. See, I think what we are also missing here is a ship crew change is actually a two-way process. It's crew relief. Crew has to get down, but some crew has to get up also. You cannot just only, disembark the crew. So it's a two-way exercise that everybody has to do. So some crew has to come, wait there, and then this crew can go back. So I think 2 centers are required, perhaps. So as Singapore comes to mind, Rotterdam comes to mind, and New Orleans comes to mind, where ships go frequently. And then, you can make nodal centers, collect all your crew, and perhaps, transport them. So that could be one solution. But of course, the feasibility has to be worked out. But I do see some merit in this suggestion, honestly.
Okay.
But I think
sorry, you want to come back?
Yeah, I want to add, because it looks simple, because the crew change is not just simply transporting people. So there are a lot of, immigration facilities and all those things. Suppose, first of all, you don't get so much time now in the way the shipping is today to know where you will do the crew change. You don't know in very few ships, you know 1 month in advance or 2 months in advance that, okay, we are going to do the crew change at such and such. Usually, in most of the ships, maybe a week in advance or 5 days in advance, And even if you are able to, you can go point to point, maybe like Singapore or Amsterdam, what you're talking about. So either you keep them on board the ship, but when you sign them off and then sign on another ship, it is not that easy, because it's a ship entity. There are immigration problems, you can't transfer there. So it is a complicated process. It looks simpler, it is not that simple.
Yeah, but I think food for thought, definitely something can be developed here. But yes, of course, it will not be simple. It will not be. But, at least something better than coming to a particular country to do a crew change. That it may give you some.
What I was trying to suggest, if there can be, agreed protocol, that like IMO has come out with it, even for, picking up seafarers from the airport and delivering them on the airport, if you can make separate green channels, that is a possibility, because most of the ships today are by and large COVID-free. By and large, I'm telling you. Once they sign off, of course, they can be checked for COVID, and then that is a possibility. And you can have chartered flight. That is a possibility. That okay, only for seafarers. Nobody else can take that flight but the seafarers. It may be a little bit costly, but many.
John, I think you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I think the using a ship is okay, perhaps for short trips. I think anything of a longer nature, as Sanjeev said, quite a lot of the time ships are only knowing what port they're going to at the last minute. But the whole thing does depend on the local port authority and the local governments having a proper protocol to have a channel to get the seafarers on and off the ship. If the government hasn't got a plan, it doesn't matter whether he goes by ship or a submarine, he'll still not be able to get off.
Absolutely.
Ali, did you want to chip in here?
Yeah. I don't think there will be a reinvention of the how people will be joining, embarking, disembarking the vessel. What's happened during this pandemic is that countries have realized, each one has realized their own sensitivity. It's very clear, and their vulnerability. Now, what we're going to see in the future, whatever is going to come from the regulatory body or industry bodies, it's all a bonus, and it's for the cause of the nation, within the seafaring nation of the maritime industry. However, countries now will work on removing that vulnerability. They will be mitigating as a risk that has been shown very clearly on that nation. I'm talking about whatever country, let it be Sri Lanka, let it be India, as a large population, let it be China, yeah? And then if you can imagine other countries, they have realized that we need to have a much robust system, and that's what we expect to see in the future. I.e., when they look at the ship, they look at the ship and the cargo and the people. So it's a whole system that they have to improvise on the procedures and how really to work with this in the future. That's what I expect to see, that in the months or year to come, is that when life comes back to normal, you need to deal with that situation, i.e. the logistics and the barriers. Now, the logistic could be for the people or the cargo and whatever supporting services, that whether it is immigration, whether it is the health, or whether it is to do, that's all in the port, yeah? And those countries now, I'm sure that they are working on how to deal with that vulnerability. So it's going to be, I think, it's going to be good. Why? Because really the crisis have shown many vulnerabilities within different systems of different countries, and all those countries, I'm sure, with their administrations, everybody is trying to work and mitigate these vulnerabilities.
Okay, thank you. I think we sort of the short-term logistics and the longer-term logistics and the need for change in both areas. Rwanti, before I move on to the next question, do you have any views as to how we should be addressing the immediate logistics of the crew change, crew logistics, and then what might happen in the longer term?
I think so. I feel that at the end of the day, let's say, for example, you disembark a crew member and the poor guy is tested positive. Who is responsible? It's not the agent, it's not the ship, it's the government of that country concerned that will have to handle the entire logistics thereafter. Taking the guy to a hospital, to a safe place, treating the guy. You know that the very first patient we had was from China, a lady who was a tourist, and she was the only patient. We saved her life, we treated her, and she was, repatriated as a very happy patient who recovered. Same thing will apply to our seafarers. Sadly, if anyone was to arrive and we disembark them and they have it, we have to take care of them. And I can assure you my government will do that, because it's they and they alone who are accountable to make sure there's no spread of the virus, to make sure this person is taken care of into the right hospital, and the other people treating him or her is properly taken care of as well. So that is why our Sri Lankan government, under a really able leadership, has created also or planning to create a coordinating center. Whilst the agents are helping the ship owners to receive all this information of crew changes, we will have a coordinating center that will ensure the health safety of these people who are getting signed off until such time they're ready for the flight. As mentioned, accumulating them to a safer aircraft, whatever. The government is going to be responsible to make sure they're taken care of. So I feel that is important at this juncture, because we are not facing a normal crew change situation. We are facing a threat and the vulnerability, as Mr. Ali mentioned, as Mr. Ali Shah mentioned, that the government will, at the end of the day, be placed responsible. So inshallah, nothing happens, but the governments have to be geared and ready to take this responsibility. That's how I feel.
Thank you. That's very good.
I want to give an example. In South Korea, we had some 7 Indonesian crew to join a ship. And one of them, upon arrival, though he was tested negative in his home country, but upon arrival in Korea, he was tested positive out of 6. But all 6 were put in the quarantine. We missed out that crew change. but we paid for it. Of course, there's a government regulation to quarantine it. So I don't think government will assume cost for it. If you are not there, that's the problem. But of course, that is their responsibility. That is their protocol. They didn't allow the whole crew to fly back until the 14 or 15 days of quarantine was passed. No symptom came to, fortunately, to anybody. But that can happen. That's the risk at this moment we are taking.
But I must say one thing. In Sri Lanka, however poor a country we may be, we have free education and we have free medicine. Our hospitals are free. So to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, even when this Chinese lady was hospitalized, she was in the best government hospital that treated her. And I do not think at all that she was given any bill. But of course, keeping on quarantine in assigned hotels, definitely, for sure, we will have to charge the ship owner for that kind of safety precaution in quarantine. But if anyone gets sick, our hospitality of a Sri Lankan is such that our public hospitals will take care of them.
Okay. There've been a number of questions.
Clive, this point is very interesting. It's very, very interesting.
Come on, Ali.
So far, you look into the countries, yeah, you find different systems having their own charities and their funds that have been created for supporting individuals and supporting organizations and let it be, yeah, businesses, etc. Now, have you heard of any fund that has been created for the COVID-19 for the industry or for seafarers? Have you heard of any? Just a question to the audience.
Okay. Well, we'll leave that one. John, you had your hand up. You wanted to?
No, sorry. I was just waving at about. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll move on to a different question, which is coming from Faisal Abri, but a number of others have sent in similar question, which is, what should be the reaction if a seafarer refuses to sign an extension contract? As per the MLC, the seafarer's consent remains a fundamental requirement for any such extension. And other people have argued, have sent questions in around, should this crisis focus on the need to change the contractual relationship with seafarers, which has often been a short-term contract basis, to something that's a little bit more longer term. So there's one issue around the specific. If they say, no, I don't want to extend my contract because of this, what can we do? And then what is the longer term? I don't know if anybody wants to pick up that question. John?
Yeah, thanks, Clive. We've actually had a couple of these questions, and they've actually occurred where there was a lockdown and the seafarer wasn't able to get off. And so we then went, the owners asked us to give our advice on this, and we contacted the seafarer and basically told him that, okay, it's his right not to extend his contract, but if he went off the ship, well, the port authorities in that country weren't letting anybody sign off, so he basically couldn't sign off. If he didn't extend his contract, he would have to remain on the ship. So what we tried, in the end, he actually extended until the next port where they could, owners could get him off. But I think it's a case of education of the seafarer as well, and that's quite a good role that we sometimes have to make people aware of the actual realities of things. I mean, if you can't sign off and you can't go home, you might as well just spend an extra few weeks on the ship, and then ultimately you'll get off. Because if you try to get off the ship, say you walked off the ship, he would then probably be either brought back to the ship or locked up ashore with difficulties in being repatriated. I mean, quite a number of countries are making exceptions for medical repatriations, but for somebody who doesn't want to extend their contract, they're less than sympathetic, shall I say.
But this is quite a legal process. Do you think seafarers get the right advice, or is there a mechanism for giving seafarers the advice that they need in these situations?
But there is a clarification also from the union side. I think ITF IMAC has issued a circular describing that this is a unprecedented time and it can be considered like a force majeure. I mean, this is not a normal circumstances when you are requesting a seafarer to extend. And it's not that the difficulty in signing off was not existing before COVID-19. There used to be trades, there used to be ports where it was not possible. Like as John was mentioning, there are ports where before also were not accepting any crew change for a certain nationality. So we had to sometimes send some other port or find a convenient places or divert the vessel to do the crew change. But this is a very special circumstances which is not a creation of the ship owner. So it's I mean, in any contract there is a like a force majeure kind of a clause. I am not too sure about the SMA, but this can be described that way. So I don't know whether I'm not a legal expert to answer it, but I'm saying it will be a bit unfair from the seafarer side because it is protecting him to extend the contract. If he's on board the ship without any contract, any valid contract, it's also not very good for him later on.
But our ship owners in general extending contracts on the same terms. So we just show my ignorance here. I mean, because obviously you say you're putting a seafarer in he's got options really. The onus is on the ship owner to be responsible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't extend somebody's contract on any conditions that are worse than they were before, and they've got to carry on his rights for leave and things like that. So
I think that's reassuring. I mean, let's hope people stick to that. But in your experience, that's responsible ship owners would never extend on worse terms. I mean, Nitin, do you have a view on this in terms of perhaps the contractual relationships with ship owners, ship managers, and seafarers? Are we going to see people review this, and is there a new normal that might emerge?
Why me? You can ask this question to Ali also, but okay. now that you've asked me,
I'll come to him.
It is like this. A seafarer and the owner. The way I look at this is we are with each other. We are a partnership. We are a relationship, and we have to we are in this together. All right. So it's nobody is worse off or better off. If I am a irresponsible ship owner today and I try and take advantage of the situation, then I am the foolishest person alive because it will come back to bite me. Now, seafarer also, we completely understand the difficulty, the stress, etc., which he goes through. And make no mistake, this is not an easy job. All right. So make no mistake, when he, his family is also under stress back home. So as responsible seafarers, we have to ensure and certainly try our best to not to do everything possible to relieve the seafarer. But I think at the same time, I would say 99% of the seafarers, in our case especially, are very understanding, and I've not had a problem. One or two will always be there, and for them, I think the law is clear, and I'm sure they get the right advice, and if they don't, then the law will follow its course. But I think generally they are very understanding.
Okay, Ali Shihab, would you like to contribute your thoughts?
Sorry, Ali.
I couldn't say it better. Nitin, he gave the best explanation. I think this is very challenging, Clive. The situations now, when you look at a seafarer, he's on board the ship, for example, and his family back at home, and he has this connection. He can talk to them, providing that the ship owner provides internet on board, and they have this social media software that they are communicating and getting their thoughts, their emotions in the right place, and comfortable. Number one. Number two, the psychological mindset at the moment. What is it? Is that my family are good and I am good. This is the safest situation you can be in. The moment you start moving from the ship, going through all those gates and reaching home, you can't reach home because your country, when you reach there, you have to be quarantined. And it depends on how severe is the system where you are reaching. They're going to test you, whether you're going to be positive, negative, or gray, God forbid. If you are gray, that is the worst situation you're in because you're going to be quarantined and then quarantined and then quarantined. So at the moment, it is safer for everybody to be where they are. And that's the understanding that people do hold with them at the moment. It's unfair to, in any way or mean, to pressure or, let's say, withhold the seafarer against his will. It's not right. So therefore, like what Nitin just mentioned, and I believe it is very right, is this is how healthy is the relationship between the company and its people. Now, when I say its people, I don't mean just ship staff, talking about head office, talking about people on board, and then, you always try your level best, and you have to show it and demonstrate it that you will work for their level best. So at the moment, but in general, there are people are happy where they are on board the ship because they want to see the situation improves on the other side. And there are people who are on the shore side also want to get back to work. This is very interesting because they want to resume work. They want to, save on their leave, etc. So it's a very complicated situation, but we are here we fix complicated things.
Good. I think you make a good point about the crew on the ship, but also the crew who are waiting, who probably aren't being paid, or are probably, were basing their personal finances around being paid. So that's the other side of the coin that perhaps we don't always consider. Ruanti, you wanted to say something?
I'm trying to say something. Actually, just as much as we say that our crew are not receiving the due respect, due vision, the visibility that they deserve, just like the airline crew, which I always say appears to be more sexy than our seafarers. There's another category of people who don't even get that visibility or recognition. And I must say that is the wife. Behind every happy seafarer is a happier woman. That's a fact. So my advice is that in this situation, seriously, if we take care of the wives and the children back home and tell them to give the comfort and the confidence to the man out there, whether it's a wife or a mother, then the guy gets the confidence that he can hang in there. So if the wife starts, pestering him with problems, then the poor guy is then going to be stressed. So I think it's the duty of the engaging office to take care more at this moment the needs of the wives and the children. That's true.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's a family. You say it's to look at it in a sort of family-based context is the right way to go. I have a question from Captain Bobby Malhotra, and it's basically around the role of the insurance companies, and because obviously the crew change is increasing costs. There's a whole raft of things that follow on from that. And I just wondered, are insurance companies engaging with ship owners and managers and with others affected, or are they declaring force majeure? What's the role of the insurance company in perhaps assisting the industry move through this crisis? Nitin, you were nodding your head, so I'm going to come to you first.
I think in our case, at least, I can tell you that our P&I club has been very proactive. They engaged with us in one or two instances. They did help us out, with the contacts and even financially at some point. So in our case, we are lucky to have P&I club which is engaging. So if you're reaching out to them, they are very appreciative, and they give you a lot of suggestions, and they don't mind helping out when if they can.
I don't know if anybody else wants to, Sanjeev, or do you have a comment on that, or is it not something you want to? Anybody want to come in on that? It's a bit of a specific question. Okay, so I'll come to a more general question from Nalin Peris. Sorry if I've pronounced the name wrong, which was, how can the industry push for the recognition of seafarers key work? So, I mean, I guess we should all argue that they always should be. But what can we do to raise it? Ruanti, what would you like to see in terms of how can the industry rally together to get seafarers designated as key workers?
Did you refer to me?
Yeah, sorry, Ruanti. Yeah, so
can you repeat that, because you were a little blurred there?
So the question was, how can the industry best push for the recognition of seafarers as key workers?
Yes, I think it's something that has to be nurtured from childhood in the media, in the school atmosphere, generally in the hearts and minds of the people. Because, for example, we don't see a ship inside the country. So therefore, the people do not have a vision of the seafarer or the ship in their hearts and minds. Whereas the airline, the aircraft we see all the time, and we see these beautiful girls as crew going around, and there's a dream of every little girl to someday become that. So I feel it's a matter of education, starting from school, where we showcase that we are so dependent on the seafarer, and that a seafarer is the most important frontline, person in our lives. That's how I think we can do that. Because in terms of wages, I think they are quite well paid. They all know their wages. That's reasonable. And it's just the image created amongst the general public. Another point I would like to mention is the seafarers themselves. Many seafarers, do they encourage their children to be seafarers? I don't think so. Not very many in this current generation. So that itself creates an impression amongst fellow classmates as to why not dad encourage me to become a seafarer. So I feel it's the responsibility of both the public, the education system, as well as the seafarer themselves.
Anybody else want to come in on this question about how we can get seafarers designated as key workers? Sanjeev?
Yeah, in India, like I told you, it's already, the shipping is considered essential services. So even during the full lockdown, the ports were open and things were going, and that's why the crew change has been allowed. But I think at individual fronts, I mean, of course, the common bodies like IMO and all, they can put forward and say, but individually, people of each nation should promote their seafarer and get that recognition as a key service provider. Like defense forces or anybody else. When I joined sea some 36 years back, it was called second line of defense. At that time it was a mandate that if we are trained there, if the need be, he can be called for that kind of service. So and it was so in many other nations. So essentially, it is a key service because a lot of international trade, they are the essential part of that.
Okay, this is an interesting question from Ashok Kumar. It says that what leadership style is required to lead teams during periods of quarantine or isolation? I just wonder, that's an interesting one for members. I mean, how it's a very challenging period, isn't it? I mean, whether what's the leadership styles and what sort of interactions does management have to have with seafarers in these times when people are in quarantine and in isolation? I don't know if anybody wants to pick that one up.
I think
Nitin, Sanjeev first and then Nitin. Sanjeev first.
Okay. I would say most important is compassion, and then he is also stressed up, and you should be very, very understanding and least reaction. You should allow the time to pass on. That is the best, and you have to be very, very understanding of his plight and situation, what he's going through, and show as much compassion as you can, and appreciate his work. I mean, this is very, very important at this point of time. I think that this is the more essential part, and the communication should never fail, because if we are not communicating, there is normally a sense that you are neglected. So constant communication, all the time engaging with the seafarers, whether they are ashore. Actually, we are all the while talking about the people who are currently on board, but there is a large population of the seafarers which are ashore and without job for months, and quite a few of them are pressed up because they have some commitments with the financial needs. So even with them, engaging with them is also as important, because they should feel connected. Otherwise, you will be the bigger loser. I feel the communication is the most important thing, and compassion.
Nitin, communication and compassion.
Oh yes, of course. I mean, these two are absolutely essentials. I think it's supposed to be very collaborative. We have to understand where they are coming from. Compassion, like Sanjeev said. I can only emphasize that communication is absolutely the key. Giving them comfort that we are trying our best. Keeping them informed what the latest updates on what we have. How soon this will all be over, etc. I think those are the key things, and keeping them motivated. For example, like us, our head of HR, shared videos, and we actually ran 1 or 2 contests in how to stay fit and how to stay positive in these difficult times. So I think those really helped also.
Okay, Ali Shihab, do you have any comments, or are you happy to leave this one?
Just what Nitin just closing words, actually, to stay really healthy, whether it is physically and mentally. And I was hearing I was watching one lecture yesterday, and actually that what was stressed on is really to make yourself ready for the stage that we're gonna go to. Be stronger. They're using a 10% number, but it's difficult really to set the 10% on your mental readiness. Yeah, but what it means is you have to work your level best and to be ready for the future. And then when it comes into the crew themselves, and I agree with Sanjeev about the connectivity. Maintain this connection, because you need to dialogue with the person, understand their needs, and provide them with whatever humanly possible. And as long as they understand that you're trying your level best, and people, as long that they know, really they don't mind.
Okay. One question I have to raise on my own half, I think as a chairman I can ask one question, is that with more and more ships going to layup at the moment, there is a suggestion that this could add another layer of stress and anxiety for seafarers in terms of where the location of the layup is and so on. I just wondered, should the industry be taking into consideration the needs of seafarers in determining the location of ship layup because of economic factors? I don't know who to come to first. So I'm going to talk to John, because he's not actually a ship owner, so he might have a slightly different perspective on this.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you lay your ship up in a safe and secure location. But I definitely think that if you're going in there with a full crew and you're in for a long-term layup, you want to repatriate most of your crew and keep your skeleton crew. So it would be sensible to go to somewhere that you can repatriate the crew from. And likewise, when you activate your ship again, you want to be able to put your crew in there without too much problem. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Ali Shihab?
I mean, so far we have not laden any of our vessels because, for obvious reasons, market, has been like a yo-yo, and there has been continuity in the business, healthy, and with regard to this, actually we are short of ship staff, because we were taking new ship deliveries. So therefore, this we did not suffer much in this regard. But I do agree with John, is that the strategy of laying off a vessel for some time, group of vessels perhaps, just like what we've seen in the past with LNG ships or bulk carriers, etc., whereby, depending on the market situation, they collect their vessels together, they put minimum manning there, and it should be in a place whereby, services can be rendered whenever you want to resume into service.
Okay, so anybody else? Ranti?
I think to answer your question in terms of where a layup should happen, I would think it would depend on whether it's a hot layup or a cold layup. Because you would then, if it's a hot layup, then the requirements of where you are going to lay up will be lesser than in a cold layup, because otherwise you have to think of the weather patterns, the weather conditions, especially in the Indian Ocean. For example, right now we are encountering really bad weather in the southwest monsoon. So I just don't even imagine having any kind of layup in that part of Sri Lanka, for example. But on the eastern coast, that is a possibility. So I think one has to consider the hot and the cold layup situation, as well as the weather patterns in the sea concerned. And as Mr. Ali mentioned, the availability of all the possible services needed for the vessel.
Okay. Does anybody else want to comment on that before I move on to the next question? Okay. Well, actually, the next question is is perhaps one to is a good one to sort of end with in a way, because it perhaps the answer's a sort of a summary. It's come from Steve Cameron, and he says, with all these industry bodies, including the IMO, ICS, ITF, WHO, ATOL, seemingly aligned on processes for crew changes. So they all agree that these are the things that should happen. But things don't seem to be happening. What are the remaining barriers, and how can we tear them down? Who am I going to come to first? Nitin, what say? Everybody seems to agree.
Sorry, you may have to repeat it. My earpiece went off.
Oh, sorry. Right. Well, it was basically with all these industry bodies, including the IMO, ICS, ITF, WHO, ATOL, all seemingly aligned on processes for facilitating crew change, enabling crew change, but things are still not happening in the way that perhaps everybody would like. What are the remaining barriers, and how can they be overcome?
Well, I think the entire webinar today was actually focusing on that, honestly. What are the barriers? The barriers are because air travel is not there. So if that is the biggest barrier today, because there are many countries which may give some restrictions, but would allow the crew to come ashore, for changes, etc. So the biggest barrier is air travel, and and enable the green channel, like what Sanjeev mentioned. So these are the biggest barriers today, because of which we are still finding it difficult to do a crew change. And from owner's perspective, let me add here, although it may not be the right thing to say, but the owner also is a part of the entire industry. So if you make it difficult for the owner and expensive for the owner, that's not going to end well for anybody. So it is the cost, I think, a big factor today. Because I was reading an article that when you go to some ports, the costs are exorbitant. So there are certain low-hanging fruits which you can immediately do, like reduce cost if the ship is actually coming only for a crew change. So those things can be easily decided. I think we have larger issues, of course, when it comes to crew change in other countries. I think biggest impediment today is air travel. If that can be started with a green channel or something.
Okay, thank you, Nitin. Dr. Rawanti, would you like to say what you think are the main barrier? Are the main barriers?
I think it's very localized in terms of how the country is doing with the COVID-19 itself. Because all the regulations from external bodies can say to do this or the other. But at the end of the day, it's the government concern that is accountable and that is answerable to everyone, not only their local population, but the crew, the changing crew as well, whom they would otherwise be putting at risk as well. So therefore, however much the regulations can be harmonized, I feel that a part of the jigsaw puzzle is in the government itself, and rightfully so. Because who is at the end of the day accountable? It's the respective government. Some countries have done well with COVID, some others. I'm proud to say we have done brilliantly in Sri Lanka. We've had 1,000 cases being hit yesterday. We have only about 500 active cases right now. And sadly, we had 9 deaths. As I always say, even 1 death is too many. But considering the rest of the world, I think our leadership has done a brilliant job. So such leadership is able to be more aligned with the regulations, with what the protocols and the frameworks given by IMO and whomsoever, they are able to follow easier than others who are in deep trouble. How can they otherwise follow the IMO regulations and risk their own population? So I feel that it's a very fine balance people have to make.
Okay, thank you very much, Ranti. John Ramage, would you like to come in at this point? John?
Yeah, I would agree with Rory, actually. The virus is affecting us at different levels. And although the industry is more or less aligned, the different countries have their own priorities. And that is to reduce the infection, save lives in their country. And the seafarers, unfortunately, don't fall into that category. So if for example, the country has less infection rate, then they are more inclined to repatriate seafarers because it's not so much of a danger. But, you know, you could look upon it another way. By the countries having a lockdown, they're actually saving the seafarers themselves, because we've actually heard that if a seafarer's been on a long voyage, they're very unlikely to have the virus. So, you know, and it's everybody's obligation to make sure that the seafarers are kept in a safe and secure environment.
Okay, thank you, John. Sanjeev, would you like to sort of say the question was, you know, what are the barriers that still have to be overcome at a time when everybody seems to agree? You know, how can we take it to the next level and actually get some sort of substantial progress on the key issues?
Yeah, on the lighter side, I would say the biggest barrier is the mental barrier at this moment, because I think the COVID-19 situation, of course, no matter how grave it was, you know, initially now there is a fear factor which is set in. Now that's not like in we are all seafarers on board. Most of the operations they have inherent dangers. But what we do, we do risk assessment, we curtail the risks, and we do the job. We don't stop doing the job. So my point taken is that, okay, initially lockdown was an absolutely essential requirement, because we did not understand how this virus is behaving, what is happening, how to control it. But now time has come that slowly we have to learn to live with it and learn to understand the dangers involving it through it, and how we can continue with our operation and having certain safeguards in place. So I think that at this moment there is a fear factor because of which these things are not allowed in the governmental, because there is a huge responsibility as far as the governments are concerned. So they are very, very, very cautious. Almost all governments around the world. But as the time has come, then we should ease out, and it can only come when some thought processes start changing.
Okay, Sanjeev. And Ali, the last to answer this particular question.
I actually asked the question earlier. Is there any funds that have been made to help ship owners and seafarers? And I haven't heard of one. So therefore, this just reflects how the industry is really working on this. Yes, there is an effort, there is a collective effort. We're trying to work and trying to solve whatever, barriers we have there, but not enough. And it goes same like what we've experienced in the past.
Okay.
There's a need for, to have a fund for the, honestly, the way the costs are going, I can tell you some smaller ship owners are going to find it very, very difficult to survive.
Yeah, they're going to disappear, and they're going to be
Yeah,
new
they're gonna
players,
disappear.
and there's a change that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You see, even in these times, there have been a lot of evacuations have taken places of different, nationals, like even Indian nationals working in different countries and all. But in the news also, I have not seen a single news item talking about seafarers. So I think somewhere, as a industry or as a community, like as Ali mentioned, we are a very fragmented community, always been, and that's why we are always taken for granted.
I think
everything. I think probably people don't know. We are discussing about seafarers, but as a public at large, don't know anything about it. It is not.
You remember the cruise line, those ships which get stranded at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And did you see how the whole system were handling those people who are stranded? Now, when we talk about those people, we talk about passengers and we talk about the crew themselves. And I think it tells it all. It says it all.
Yeah. I think you're right there. I think there was, without going into the details of the coverage of those cruise ship things and the way that local authorities responded was perhaps symptomatic of the way in which seafarers, and perhaps that it begs the thing that we all as a collective industry need to raise the profile of seafarers and how important they are. Because when we sit in our office, we're all wearing something that was transported by ship, probably, and we're going to get in our car and we're going to drive something that was probably moved by a ship and is actually fueled by something that moved by a ship. Every part of our daily life it involves some element of shipping, but the general public don't see it, and I think we need, as a general conceptual level, I think that's something that we do need to raise, because our seafarers are heroes and they are key workers, but they're sort of behind the scenes.
That situation did a commercial damage for those shipping companies or cruise line companies, and this is not going to be recovering very soon. This is going to be really, really difficult for the future, even for people who had lined up their investment to go for that line of industry. Imagine everybody having a turnaround now. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Time has flown by, and it's now 11:30 in the UK. I'm not sure wherever it is, whatever time it is, wherever you are. But at the beginning, I gave each of our panelists a minute to sort of just give a punchy sort of opening. I'm usually a sort of glass half full kind of person, and while we're in the middle of a crisis, I think that crises are often the catalyst for change, and there could be some positive things coming out of this. I'm just going to ask each member, if we were the same question, if we were sitting here in a year's time, what do you think will be the most positive thing that will have come out of the crisis, in particular relating to the way in which we crew, man, and operate our ships? I'm just going to take each in order, not in any particular order, but just the order that they are on my screen. So I'm going to start with Nitin. So just in a minute, what do you think is if we were sitting here in a year's time, what's the most positive thing?
I think what will happen is the relationship between a seafarer and the owner is going to become better because of the constant communication going and the understanding which will develop with this. I think what will also happen is it will make everybody more vigilant and nimble in terms of adjusting to different things at different times. So the most positive would be, I think we'll become more resilient as an industry. I think we'll all see our strengths, that how strong actually we were during these times, because make no mistake, many industries are suffering much worse. So I think we'll all be discussing a year from now when hopefully, this will go away and we'll be returning to normal again. I think some few things are certainly going to change forever. Definitely the way we look at our contracts, the way we look at dealing with people, the way we look at conducting ourselves, I think all that's going to undergo a very positive change.
Okay, thank you, Nitin. Thank you. Ali Shihab.
I'll first ask Roti.
Okay.
I'll pass the mic to her first. Please.
All right, it's been very gentlemanly. Ranti.
All right. In fact, I may be making a very dumb statement, but it is a statement in relation to the question that Mr. Ali Shihab mentioned. I'm not an expert in this area, but I'm just thinking while listening. This was in relation to a fund for the ship owners and the seafarers who are now troubled with this pandemic. I feel I am seeing around the world the countries that had the highest GDP with the biggest military, from that level to the bottommost country is hit. Therefore, I do not see the government being able to create any fund for us shipping people or ships or ship owners or seafarers. I'm just wondering whether we ourselves can work out something with the insurance companies for the future, something like declaring general average, something similar in the event of a corporate disaster or a pandemic of this nature. I don't know, I'm not an insurance expert, but that's the thought that came to me.
Good, that's a very positive thought. Ali, shall I come to you now?
Yeah, really it's very difficult to predict what it's going to be like in the future, because there is a residue, there's a chip that's been embedded in our head now on how you see things and how you perceive people. Would you classify them as healthy or not healthy? And this is going to be with us for some time. There will be a new normal, and what is the new normal? I really don't know. Yeah. However, there is another healthy residue that's going to be with us also for the future. Is I mentioned earlier when we talked previously about digital transformation, and we used to talk about creating your virtual ship. You have your ship itself and you have your virtual ship. So therefore, as we're having now this virtual meeting, so therefore we have established so many different ways of means that in the past is either we are lazy, or in the past was there is really no necessity for you to go into that virtual world. And this will become more often used in various areas of our business and our normal life. I'm talking to you at the moment. There is another screen on my right side with another meeting ongoing with another device. And there is a fourth one which is on the mobile. But the one on the mobile has 3-4 different groups that are chatting at the same time. And this kind of a virtual world that will happen in the future, can you imagine how much of a speed of information that you are transferring and then you're making decisions? But what is missing at the moment is the right governance to make things to work correctly. You have procedures in place and you have your teams. This pandemic has proven who is the resilient and who can work and who you need and you don't need. No more sympathy. Go to the future, start rewriting your procedure, have the right governance in place, and remove those barriers that you've been suffering from for many years. And you couldn't excel to a higher level. And there is the opportunity. I'm talking now of what we know and what we have tried and tested and has proven to be workable and achievable. We'll focus on this and develop it further and take things as they come. And, share love with everybody.
Okay, John, coming to you, and then finally to Sanjeev, but John first.
I think this epidemic really has shown companies different ways of doing things, becoming more efficient, using new technology. We haven't talked about it today, but that's especially true in the case of audits, inspections, statutory and class surveys. We could see more virtual audits were actually done using video cameras and things on your phone. I think as Nitin said, I think there will be a change, hopefully but for the better, in the relationships between the crew and the owner. And I think the big thing also is a reputation. I think companies, I think you used the term before, good, responsible owners will have enhanced their reputation during this period, I think, and some owners will probably have done the opposite, really, and it's all to do on how they behave and how they communicate, and how that relationship with the seafarers has been allowed to develop.
Good point. Sanjeev, you have the final word. How do you see the barriers? Sorry, how do you not barriers? How do you see the opportunities looking forward?
Yeah. First of all, you said what is the biggest positive? Biggest positive for the world is, I think the world is environmentally much more cleaner. This is one great positive which has come out of this lockdown. But having said that, I mean, I also agree with John and Ali. Basically, the biggest discovery of this time is that the technology, what wonders it can do. Practically, I think I'm hearing from everywhere, and then we are working from home. And this is also our impression for last almost 2 months that we are more efficient, we are more focused, and the work is as usual. It doesn't matter where you sit, but you can still be as focused. In fact, we are having meetings with our clients and everybody, like we are having a webinar, and we are not missing out traveling. So travel will reduce. I think that will be one positive thing which will happen.
Yes, agreed. Definitely.
And usually shipping industry is very conservative and I would say in adapting or embracing new technology. It's not just the IT, but otherwise also. They are always sitting on the fence and usually the last one to, take any technology until unless they are forced with. I think this will change that mindset for the ship owners and this thing, that what technology can do for them. And going forward, the ship management I see will be more and more remote tools will be developed by which we will be able to do ship management as effectively. And I already see there are a lot of such tools are available. This will be this will definitely make the way for it.
I think personally we have all learned how to use Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and all the other activities. So that's been personally very gratifying.
But there is one thing really very important is this. What you know before is gone. The new history you have now.
It's a new world.
Today, if any colleague at work come to you and says, "Oh, I can't do this," and you say, "What do you mean you cannot do this?" It's impossible. Because we've done the impossible, unthinkable. So therefore, now there is no chance for anybody to come to you and say, "I cannot do it." No, you can't do it. It's very much possible. And that kind of argument will be said, it's in our mind. It will be there. And really, in this regard, that's where the Maritime Standard comes. Yeah. Really, I thank their effort very much for really bringing, as they say, I don't know, what application do you use on your smartphone? There's it's called Smart Things. And if you are using Samsung, I don't want to brand Samsung here, but if you are using iPhone, for example, you have AirDrop and you have other things that you utilize. It's just bringing people, the different parts of the industry together, and really for us to have the opportunity here and share our thoughts and really share it with the audience. And we really like to thank them for the questions. And sorry that we could not answer all the questions, but for sure, whatever that comment have been made or question be raised, it's very handy for us. It's not just for us to answer some questions we cannot answer, but some comments are there or questions we will take back to our team and share with them and benefit from this what the Maritime Standard have bring together.
Thank you, Ali. So you took some of my words then, but thank you very much. I think the aim of these webinars is to bring people together, to discuss, to brainstorm, and I think we've had a very good discussion. I won't list of all the topics that we've discussed. I'll be here for another 10 minutes if I covered them. But I think what's come across is that this issue around seafaring in a crisis is very complex and multifaceted, but that above all else, it has the solution partly lies within individual companies, but predominantly at an international level, at a governmental level, and that's where we've got to focus our efforts to get change and a change in recognition of seafarers that they are not just faceless guys on boats. They are actually key workers who help every single one of us in our daily lives, and that we need to find ways of doing things. I mean, I know when I was at school, you always used to do watershed moments in history. I mean, this is without doubt a watershed moment in all our histories, and nothing will be the same after it as it was before. And I think that applies to shipping, and it applies to how we crew, man, and staff, and the human resources aspects of shipping. And there'll be some short-term challenges, but I think we just heard there in that last those last comments, there's an opportunity to sort of build on it and say, well, there's some positives that can be taken out of this, and this is what we've all got to work for. And I think that's what I take away from this, that it's not all doom and gloom. We're not all sort of saying, oh, this is terrible. We're actually sort of looking to the forward future and saying we're ready to make a new post-COVID world, and in doing so, we are going to sort of focus very much on the seafarer crew element of the shipping operation. So with that, I'll say thank you again hugely to our panelists, Nitin Mehta, Ali Shihab, John Ramage, Ranti De Silva, and Sanjeev Sharma. You've been excellent, or you've all made a fantastic contribution, and I really, really appreciate it. I'd like to say thank you to the silent masses, well, about 300 or 400 people who were listening in. I mean, as Ali said, sorry that we couldn't answer all your questions, but those that are relevant and appropriate, we may pass on to the individual panelists, and they will answer you. We hope to make this a regular series, and the next one is due on the 3rd of June, so please put that note in your diary, and we will see you virtually then. When I close this down, there may be an opportunity for you, well, there will be an opportunity for you to take part in a questionnaire. We really value your feedback, because obviously we want to make each one better than the last one. So, you know, what have you liked about this one? What would you suggest? And what topics would you like us to cover? Because this crisis has got implications from everything from, you know, port operations through to, you know, air transport and everything. So just let us know. So really, with that, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for taking part, and we'll see you again. And in the meantime, please do stay safe. So thanks for all your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.